Hey kids, it's Jurassic James, and on this Jurassic James Explains, we're looking at porifera, or sponges. So one thing to point out is that in the fossil record, sponges are kind of a big deal before like dinosaur time. They had their own, today we have coral reefs. There's times in which you had sponge reefs, basically. It's really neat in the fossil record there, again, before dinosaurs. But I want to point out one thing too, what are porifera? They're actually animals, like you and I, but they're like, if they're not the first animal, they're some of the earliest animals. And what I'm saying is very simple: is that a sponge is an animal because it's multicellular, but the cells work together like a community. So, for example, you could technically take some types of sponges today and put one of those living sponges in a blender and blend it for a second, and then turn it off, put it back in your saltwater tank, and it could technically start to rebuild itself again. Um, that's under certain circumstances. You can't do that with any other animal. The idea is that just like these are very very simple early life forms. That's why you see a sponge, it's like this weird rock looking thing or plant looking thing that's very bright. They're very different life forms. Now, the reason they're designed this way is because these cells are working together in a community, but they're one thing. But they can actually start rebuilding themselves or reorganizing themselves too in this process if they're damaged or injured. So in general, the phylum or the grouping for sponges is called Porifera. Por meaning like whole, and ifra means full of or thereof. So in general, for a sponge, now I'll use this example here. And again, there's never like, except for one example, there's never a lot of just toy sponges going out there. If you buy a marine ocean life pack of toy group, there may be a sponge in the background setting, but not really a focus on the guys. But there's usually a giant hole in the top called an osculum, and there's a hollow in the middle called a spongicle, and there's holes all the way around it. So there's little cells on the inside that beat, and it creates a pressure and it pulls water and nutrients into the sponge. Anything going in will get captured by one of the cells, and then whatever clean water gets pushed out the top. So they're called filter feeders because they're actually filtering the ocean. It's really kind of cool. And the idea is that that's their general way of feeding. They pull the water in, grab whatever things are in it, and it goes out the top. You're like, what do you mean, what's in it? Well, there's plankton, little phytoplankton, things like that. But I also want you to imagine when, like a shark, like Josh nature shows, a shark will bite onto something and shake really hard, and all this little particle stuff that kind of goes like that. That's organic material that's flowed through the ocean, and it sinks down, and sponges grab a hold of that. Sponges are really hardy life forms, little animals, because they can live in really cold temperatures. They can live in lakes, not rivers really, but the idea is that you see sponges in cold, different environments. They do really well. They're very hardy, and they've been around for over 600 million years. They were here before the first bug, the first squid, the first anything. So I mean, they're other than like bacteria or algae. So they're a step above algae, but they're below everyone else in life almost in a sense. So again, on this particular one, you have the purple sponge there. These are green ones, are sponges as well. This little thing here, I think, is some kind of either, I would assume that's like either a tube worm coming out of a tube, or it's some kind of like crinoid thing or something. I don't know, but it's not a sponge. The two big guys here are sponges. This one, the orange one, again, is a sponge. The purple one I'm looking at here appears to be like a sea fan, which is technically a relative of Nidaria, which is like a coral, and which is another video, different group. But the orange part is, and of course this is the same kind of model, but there's a brain coral there, which is not a sponge, and sea fan. The orange thing is a sponge. That's what we're looking at here. But the only sponge that I have that's really like on purpose is this guy here, and it's in the Cambrian tube from Safari. And and the idea is that sponges are super underappreciated by fossil collectors because you're sponges, whatever. But they're, first of all, they're important because my first fossil sponge that I ever dug up or collected was in Mineral Wells, Texas. It's a free fossil park, and there's sponges all over the place. I mean, there's crinoids too and other things, but like they're sponges. They're there. And I remember whenever I took a group there, they're like, "Oh, this is not interesting. Like, it's still a fossil. It's a thing that once lived." So you're seeing that here, and again, you can kind of see the same structure where they don't make a lot of pores in the toy, but there will be holes everywhere, and the water will go in, be absorbed, and then out like this. But one thing to point out with sponges too is you don't see a uniform look to them because the cells reform. I mean, there's enough of a look to create a species, right? But you can see individual different like the branches could be in different order by different sponges, right? That's because the individuals were growing in any way. Now, sponges do have skeletons. They look very soft. If you think about the sponges you have like in the painting and all that, in your cleaning sponge, the natural ones. But the truth is they have little, okay, kids, go home and ask like mom or dad or maybe grandpa or grandma about jacks. It's a game where you head up a ball and these little spiky bit metal thing or plastic things now, and you would throw the ball down. You have to collect the things for the ball to bounce again. It's a game from like the 40s, I think, or 30s. But the idea is that their skeletal systems are called spiracles, and they look like spicules. They look like jacks, basically. And they're just kind of judged about the thing for support. So they're really interesting life forms, and again, they're underappreciated. But here are sponges, and I'll see you guys next time.